My name's Georgina. I'm here from Corporate Health Group to talk to you today about basic nutrition. We're going to really focus on getting back to the basics today, having a look at the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, talking about appropriate portion sizes, healthy snacking ideas, and then we're also going to look at reading food labels because I know they can be quite confusing. There's so much mixed information out there with different diets claiming to be the best, but basically research has shown that eating moderate amounts from all the food groups is the best way to be. Our busy lifestyles have created a problem where we tend to eat a lot of processed foods and far less fresh fruits and vegetables than we should be. The trouble with processed foods is they tend to be high in fat, salt and sugar and low in vitamins and minerals. Australians are getting bigger. 2.4 million Australians were classified as being obese back in 2004. About a quarter of our young people are classified as being overweight or obese, and the trouble with this is that overweight young people tend to grow to be overweight and obese older people. So why all the fuss about obesity? Basically, obesity increases our risk of developing many chronic conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, osteoarthritis. Extra weight puts a lot of pressure on our joints, and also high cholesterol levels. A lot of people don't realise that 275 Australians are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes every day, and about a quarter of our cancer cases are attributed to lifestyle factors as well. So that equates to about 7,600 cancer deaths a year, which are directly correlated to overweight, obesity, inactivity and alcohol. So basically there is no real secret. Weight gain has to do with an energy balance. So to keep your weight steady, you need the calories that you're eating to equate to what your body is burning off every day. If you're gaining weight, it shows that the calories that you're eating is more than what your body needs each day, so it's storing those extra as fat. To lose weight, you need to make sure that the calories that you're consuming, so what you're eating, provides less energy than what your body uses each day. Therefore, your body will use your fat stores and you'll lose weight. So this slide here shows us the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, which is basically a representation of the types of foods that we should be eating every day. If you look at it, you can see it's shaped like a plate, which has the proportions of the different food groups that you should be eating throughout the day. The largest portion is from the whole grain breads and cereal section, followed by vegetables, fruits, low-fat dairy and lean meats. You can see in the corner of the poster, not included in the daily plate, are the foods that we refer to as sometimes food. They're not included in the daily plate because it's not something that you should be eating as part of every meal. These foods are higher in fat, salt, sugar and lower in vitamins and minerals, and include foods such as your fats, pies, cakes, biscuits, chips and lollies. Also demonstrated on the poster is a big jug of water, and it basically says to drink plenty of water every day. This is really important because we should be aiming to drink about 1.5 to 2 litres of water every day. It has been shown that lots of people will mistake the feeling of dehydration for hunger. So their body's telling them that they're thirsty, but they're interpreting that signal as being hungry, so they go and get something to eat. If you are trying to lose weight and you're feeling hungry, having a big glass of water and waiting 5 minutes and seeing if that satisfies you can be a good way to make sure that you're picking up on these cues of dehydration and not eating and getting in extra calories instead. When we look at portion sizes, probably one of the easiest ways to determine what an appropriate portion size for you is to use your hand as a guide. Okay? So in terms of your protein portion of your meal, so your meats, fish, eggs, you should be aiming for a size about the size of your palm. So not including your fingers, and the width of your palm there should be your protein portion on your plate. Your carbohydrate portion, so your potato or your rice or pasta, should be about the size of your clenched fist, which is quite small if you think you're having a bolognese type meal. So that's why it's important to increase the bulk of your meal with adding plenty of vegetables or having a side salad. In terms of your vegetables, you should be having 2 cupped handfuls at your meal times. So vegetables really should be taking up the majority of your plate. So vegetables, fruit and vegetables is something that there's been a big push on over the last few years. You should all know that we should be aiming for about 5 serves of vegetables every day, with a serve equating to 1 medium potato, half a cup of cooked vegetables, or 1 cup of salad vegetables. Our intake of carbohydrates really varies depending on our activity needs. So if someone is quite active, then they're going to need to eat more carbohydrates than someone who leads a sedentary lifestyle. The intake of carbohydrates ranges from about 4 serves a day up to 8, 10 even in an athlete. A serve of carbohydrate equates to 2 pieces of bread, a cup of pasta, a cup of rice, or around a cup of your normal breakfast cereal. As mentioned previously, our protein needs are actually quite a lot lower than what we tend to eat. Australians are notorious for eating a lot more protein than what we physiologically need. So the basic requirement is about 1 to 1.5 serves of protein a day, with a serve equating to around 100 grams of lean meat, which is quite small, about the size of a deck of cards. Dairy is really important for our bone health. It provides us with our best source of calcium. It also has other essential vitamins and minerals such as zinc. Low-fat dairy is the best way to go because it's lower in calories and lower in saturated fat. And we should be aiming for 2 to 3 serves of dairy a day, with a serve equating to a glass of milk, one of those small 200-gram tubs of yogurts, or enough cheese, 40 grams, to cover 1 slice of bread. Extra foods is something that we should really be limiting if we're trying to watch our weight because they're high in calories. A serve of extra foods is quite small, so 2 teaspoons of butter or oil, 2 sweet biscuits, or half a pie or pasty equates to 1 serve of extra food. So you can see that with the quantity of these foods being quite small, you can easily have quite a high intake of extras if you don't watch your intake. So things that we should be having in small amounts include products that are high in salt. We get enough salt in our diet naturally occurring in the fruits and vegetables and breads and cereals that we eat, so we want to stay away from sources of excessive salt. So that includes salt that you add in your cooking or at the table. It's better if you can flavour your foods using herbs and spices or pepper and lemon juice. And there's also a lot of hidden salt in our food system. So that includes packet pastas, a lot of sauces that we use, canned products can also be high in salt, so just be wary there. In terms of fats, all fats are high in calories, so we want to limit those overall if we're trying to lose weight because they're quite energy dense. But there are good and bad fats. Bad fats are basically referred to as saturated fats. We call these fats bad because they increase our blood cholesterol levels, they increase our risk of having coronary associated events. Saturated fats are from your animal sources predominantly, so that's the visible fat and invisible fat on meats. Butter and dairy as well are high in saturated fats. That's why we recommend using low-fat dairy products. Saturated fats are also high in coconut and palm oil, so they're an exception from the rule. That's a vegetable source of saturated fat. Coconut and palm oil are used a lot commercially in your takeaway food chains and also in cakes and biscuits that you might buy commercially, so just be wary of those. Unsaturated fats, so these are your polyunsaturated, monounsaturated and omega fats, are healthy fats. So these fats are actually good for your heart, so it's best to try and include those within your diet. So this includes olive oil, sunflowers, canola oils, margarines, oily fish, nuts and seeds. Sugar is another thing to try and limit. Of course it leads to dental problems, but also to excessive weight if we're not burning off the calories that we're taking in through the excess sugar. So being aware of your lollies and chocolates, cordials, soft drinks. Also fruit juice is quite high in sugar. If you think about the amount of oranges it takes to get 1 glass of juice, you're probably looking at 6 to 8 oranges, which is a quantity that you'd be unlikely to sit down and eat in one setting. So be wary of the amount of sugar that you can get from that source. Excessive amounts of alcohol as well contribute a lot of extra calories that can hinder your weight loss attempts. It's recommended that adults only consume about 1 to 2 standard drinks a day, and it's really important to have 2 alcohol-free days a week as well. Big packages, serving sizes and supersized meals are subconsciously telling us that big serving sizes are normal. Most of us underestimate the amount that we eat, and therefore the amount of kilojoules or calories that we're consuming by about 25%. The average plate size has grown about 8 centimetres in diameter since the 1960s. Unfortunately, the amount of energy that we're using each day and burning off has not increased so much and has probably even decreased. So this is leading to a situation where we're eating more, moving less, and is consequently resulting in weight gain. One of the easiest ways that you can decrease your calorie intake is to invest in smaller plates and cups. Research has shown that people who eat off of a smaller plate and drink out of a smaller cup will over the course of a meal consume less food. So by making this small change, it doesn't feel like you're depriving yourself because you're still seeing a full plate of food, but you can see how over the course of a week and then a year that your total intake is going to decrease, and this can help with weight loss. Eating a stock-based soup prior to a meal is another way that you can decrease the amount of calories that you eat. It's been proven that those who eat soup prior to a meal then subsequently eat less because they're filling up their stomach on the low-calorie, water-based soup. This can be a good strategy when going into winter to decrease your overall calorie intake and help with weight loss. Other strategies include never eating straight from the box, bag or carton. So it's important that if you are going to snack on something, be it chocolate or chips, that you choose an appropriate serve size, put it in a bowl, put away the container of the extra food, and then take your food to the table to eat it. This way you're less likely to overeat. It's also important to keep in mind that if you eat out regularly, that the servings that you're given at restaurants will be a lot more than what you would normally serve yourself at home. So being wary of this and trying not to eat the entire amount, or ordering an entree, or doing any extra exercise the day before to make up for this increased calorie intake can all be good strategies. The healthy restaurant perception can lull us into a false sense of security, so be careful when eating at these establishments. It's been shown that when people are told that they're eating a low-fat product, that they'll actually eat 50% more of it. So that's 50% more calories, and can actually equate to the same amount of calories that you may eat of a higher fat product. Places like Subway do have really healthy options, but they also have a lot of healthy options, so be wary of what you're choosing. If you choose, for example, something like a pizza sub that has a lot of fatty meats on it, then you add cheese, then you're adding a creamy sauce, and you might grab a couple of cookies and a soft drink as well. You can actually consume more calories with that meal than if you went to McDonald's and got a Big Mac. So be careful. So which one of these glasses do you think holds the most? They actually hold the same volume of fluid, but what happens is our mind tends to focus on the height. It's called the vertical horizontal height illusion, and so this tricks our bodies into assuming that we're getting more fluid from the taller, thinner glass. For this reason, it's really important to be mindful when you're eating and to focus on your body's cues, because what we're seeing might not necessarily be what we're getting. It's important to try and eat slowly so that you pick up on when your body is telling you that it's full and can stop eating at that point. Most of us tend to eat way too quickly, and it takes our brain about 20 minutes to pick up signals from the stomach that the stomach is full. So if you've finished your meal in 10 minutes, you're totally bypassing this natural mechanism. So try and eat slowly, put your cutlery down between each mouthful, and have a nice big glass of water with your meal, because that will both slow down your eating and fill up your stomach with that extra fluid volume, therefore leaving less space for the high calories of the food. Many of us find snacking a temptation that's too hard to curb. It's important to be aware of why you're snacking. Are you snacking because you're actually hungry, or is it because you're bored and that's what you tend to do at that time of day, or because it's there and accessible? So think about why you're eating, and if you are wanting to eat because you're physically hungry, then that's fine. Just make sure you choose an appropriate snack. If you tend to snack a lot at work, being organised and taking healthy snacks along to work so that you're less likely to go down to the vending machine, can be a really good option. Removing temptation, so rather than having a bowl of lollies where you're walking past it and picking off of it all day, having those away in the cupboard can be a good way to decrease your intake. Reading food labels, which we'll go through later as well, can make it easier for you to identify what better choices are. Watching your portion size, like we've also mentioned, is also really important. So rather than snacking straight out of the bag, choose an appropriate portion size, put the larger bag away, and then eat that amount. Also, choosing low GI snacks can be a good way to make you feel more satisfied for longer. So glycemic index is basically a measure of how quickly foods are broken down and how quickly the energy is then released into our system. So a lower GI food is broken down much more slowly, therefore releasing the energy over a longer period, so that is a better choice. So a good example of this is probably comparing a dense multigrain bread as opposed to a white piece of bread. The multigrain piece of bread is going to be broken down slower in your stomach, therefore the energy that you're getting from that will last you a longer period. So it's important to remember that we can still enjoy the pleasures of life. It's more about looking at the serving size or how frequently we're consuming those higher calorie, extra sometimes foods to make sure they're in balance with our energy usage. So if, for example, you're having a piece of cake because that's what you guys have at work every Monday, perhaps having a smaller slice, or only once every second week having that piece of cake with everyone at work. So looking at if you'd rather have the food less frequently or a smaller portion is probably a good way to go about it, so that you don't feel like you're depriving yourself. Looking at food labels as well and choosing an alternate food that is better for you nutritionally can be a good option. Using diet products as well. If you have a look through your booklet, it talks about different diet desserts which are good choices. Or if you are prone to having desserts, making homemade desserts means that you're able to modify the ingredients, replacing butter with an unsaturated margarine, decreasing the amount of sugar that you add, or using fruit as a natural sweetener, or even giving yourself a smaller serving of your homemade dessert can be a good way to decrease your calories as well, while still getting that sweetness that you're craving. The Nutrition Information panel on products gives us a lot of information about the calories or kilojoules or energy in a product, the amount of fat, sugar, salt and fibre. So these are all important things to look at when you're trying to decide what product is the best choice. When comparing similar products, it's important to compare the per 100 gram columns that you're comparing the same quantity of food. Ingredients are always listed in terms of quantity in the food, so the highest quantity in the ingredient is listed first and then it goes down to the least. So if you see any words in the first few ingredients that mean fat or sugar or salt, you can be sure that that product is high in those components and probably isn't a very good choice. So in terms of understanding a label, you need to compare the different components of the food. If you're trying to lose weight, then you want the number of calories or kilojoules, so the energy in the product, to be as low as possible. In terms of fat, it's important to aim for products that are low in saturated fat, so less than 3 grams per 100 gram would be an appropriate choice. And in terms of total fat, again, you want to go for the lowest amount of total fat, so less than 10 grams per 100 grams is a good guide there. For sugar, it's important to identify if the sugar is just added sugar or if it's coming naturally occurring in the food. For example, dairy products will have naturally occurring lactose, and products with fruit will have the natural fruit sugar. So we allow more sugar in these products than in products without naturally occurring sugar. For example, a breakfast cereal like Wheat Bix, we'd be aiming for less than 10 grams of sugar per 100 gram. But if it was a cereal with dried fruit, then less than 25 grams of sugar per 100 grams is appropriate. In terms of fibre, we need about 30 grams of fibre a day, so products with more fibre are the better choice. As far as salt goes, or sodium, a very low salt product would be a product with less than 120 milligrams per 100 grams, but in some foods this won't be an option. So for example, bread or biscuits, you'd be very hard pressed to find something with less than 120 milligrams per 100 grams. So less than 400 milligrams per 100 grams would be an appropriate choice. But again, like with the calories and the fat, the less sodium, the better. So thank you for listening. This brings us to the end of the presentation. Everything that we've discussed today is also detailed in the booklet that you should have had forwarded with the presentation. And for further information, you can visit www.chg.net.au.